Hey, folks, Eric Stacklebeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. And what a weekend with the death of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, the butcher of Tehran, is no more. Along with Iran's foreign minister, both perished aboard that helicopter that crashed along the Iran-Azerbaijan border. An earth-shaking moment for the Middle East. The world's most chaotic region was already very unstable. It just got a bit more unstable, perhaps more than a bit. What comes next after Raisi's death? That's number one. We'll be discussing that today, folks. And number two, the International Criminal Court. Now, this is a global criminal court based out of The Hague in the Netherlands. And the International Criminal Court today, the chief prosecutor for the ICC, so-called, has declared his intention after an investigation over the past few months, which we told you about here in the newscast. He has declared his intention to issue arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and some Hamas leaders as well. But the key here, Bibi and Yoav Gallant, international arrest warrants will be issued against them for supposed extermination and forced intentional starvation of the Palestinian people. This is according to the International Criminal Court. Folks, it's insane. As Netanyahu called it, it's absurd. It would make Hitler very proud. Netanyahu basically said in his comments about it today, addressing it. Will this make it more difficult? Say Netanyahu or Gallant want to go abroad, travel overseas. Is there the possibility that they could be arrested as part of this International Criminal Court arrest warrant, dragged before The Hague? That's certainly the intention when the ICC does something like this. So we're going to break that down as well, folks. A lot to talk about. And also at the same time, we have apparently now, reportedly, according to reports out of the region, close to 1 million people evacuated from Rafah in advance of an Israeli offensive there to root out those final 4 Hamas battalions that have set up shop in Rafah along Gaza's border with Egypt. At the same time, the U.S. National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, yet again, is in Israel, meeting with Israeli officials, and yet again, reiterating the Biden administration's complete and utter opposition to any Israeli operation in Rafah. Or according to Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, what he said last weekend, Israel needs to get out of Gaza. That's this administration's view, which means, of course, that Israel does not finish the job and which would leave Hamas alive to fight another day. And for Israel, that's a non-starter. And that's why Israeli leaders keep saying to Biden administration officials, hey, we must do this. And yet we've seen, folks, this steady procession, constant drumbeat of Biden administration officials visiting Israel, and not just a leisurely visit to check out the scenery. These are visits to browbeat and to pressure Israeli leaders to not invade Rafah and finish the job. Pathetically and disgracefully enough, that's exactly what's happening. And that's why I believe Israel's operation in Rafah has stalled, or I shouldn't say in Rafah, the operation to go into Rafah, I should say. Look, there's been heavy fighting in eastern Rafah over the past week for sure, but in Gaza writ large, Israel had incredible momentum and was making massive strides in crushing Hamas on the ropes, and then all of a sudden things kind of screeched to a halt in many ways as the planned Rafah offensive stalled, put on hold. Hamas starts to reoccupy parts of central and northern Gaza, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, what's happening here? What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. The Biden administration has Israel at least one arm tied behind its back. Listen what they're trying to do, folks. They are trying to in three ways right now. The Biden administration has Israel over a barrel. Number one, restraining Israel in a very public way to the point where Joe Biden said, hey, we're withholding arms shipments if you do it, restraining Israel from going into Rafah and finishing Hamas. That's number one. And potentially, by the way, finding Israeli hostages there and bringing them home safely, including several U.S. citizens who are being held hostage. Strangely, you don't hear the White House talk about that very much. So restraining Israel in Rafah, restraining Israel from striking in a major way against Hezbollah, And on April 13th, or in the aftermath, restrained Israel from retaliating in a meaningful way against Iran after that unprecedented barrage of over 300 projectiles from Iranian soil for the first time ever at Israel. So restraining Israel in three major, dangerous ways: with Hamas, with Hezbollah, and with the Iranian regime. And look, we talked about this on yesterday's live stream. We did a special Sunday live stream in the wake of that helicopter crash in Iran with Ibrahim Raisi on board. We'll talk about that more in a minute, folks. But I talked about this yesterday on the live stream. If you miss any of our newscasts, our live streams, simply go to our homepage right here on the Watchman YouTube channel, and they're all right there in our archives under newscast. By the way, while you are there, hey, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Things are happening very rapidly in the world's most chaotic and volatile region, and we want you to be plugged in. We want you to be in the know on what's happening and why it matters to you, no matter where you live. And we do it all from a biblical, unapologetically biblical perspective. But I talked yesterday because you might say, wow, Israel could just tell the Iranian regime, hey, or I'm sorry, the Biden administration, hey, buzz off. We're going to do what we need to do. We're a sovereign nation. We'll do what we need to do to defend our nation. Amen, by the way. But Israel is in a situation where it has become so beholden to American armaments, to U.S. military hardware, to weaponry, ammunition, etc., that Israel feels like it has to, in a massive way, take that into consideration, take the concerns, the complaints of whatever the U.S. administration is, whoever's in office, that must be taken into account by Israeli leaders. And that's how they believe. And folks, in the natural, I can see where they're coming from, but man, oh man, I just ask for prayers for the current Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu, his cabinet, to trust, don't trust in man or have any of that kind of thinking where, hey, we need the U.S., we're relying on the U.S. And I say this as a proud American who loves my country and loves a strong U.S.-Israel relationship, obviously. But Israel's at a point now where, look, and this was short-sighted, and I think Israelis will tell you this, it was short-sighted to become so reliant on American armaments for this very reason, because a moment was coming where eventually you'd have a hostile U.S. administration. And this isn't the first time. Think back to Jimmy Carter in the late 1970s. Obviously, Barack Obama, that administration. By the way, the George H.W. Bush administration from 88 to 92 wasn't the friendliest to Israel either. So it's not always rosy in government-to-government contacts and relations between Israel and the U.S., and that's why I believe Israel should have prepared for this day and started to build in a more serious way, really build up its own domestic arms production. But now we're in a situation where the U.S., if Biden says, hey, I'm withholding an arms shipment like he did 2 weeks ago, then that has major shockwaves for Israel's security. Now, I talked about trusting in men and fear of man. Trust in God. That's my prayer. I mentioned a minute ago to finish that thought. Pray for Israeli leaders to have spines of steel and the wisdom of Solomon, and to just lean on the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is Israel's ultimate protector, and he neither slumbers nor sleeps. And right now, Israel could use a few good friends, needless to say. And that's why we are so honored on this channel to have this platform to speak truth for such a time as this, to speak truth, to bring moral clarity, and to bring the facts that you need so you can fulfill that biblical mandate laid out in Genesis 12:3 and stand with Israel now more than ever before. And not a time in Israel's modern history since it was miraculously reborn in 1948, 76 years ago, that Israel has needed that support more. Hey, folks, quick programming note. We're talking about everything going on in the world chaos. It seemed like the world was a bit more stable, understatement, before Joe Biden came into office. Well, tomorrow night, and I mentioned this on yesterday's show, but tomorrow night, Tuesday, May 21st, on my brand new nightly show on TBN, it's called Stacklebeck Tonight. It airs every weeknight on TBN. at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time with a re-air each night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be sitting down for an exclusive interview with the 45th and perhaps soon to be 47th President of the United States. Donald J. Trump will be joining me tomorrow night on the Stackleback Tonight show on TBN. Now, over the weekend, I was able to interview him at the NRA convention, the annual NRA convention in Dallas, Texas. We sat down and he shared what he would do about threats gathering abroad, internal threats, the porous southern border here in the United States, and why he does what he does with just relentless, and I mean relentless, opposition, harassment, persecution for the past 9 years, ever since he came down that escalator and declared his candidacy for the presidency. It's been a nonstop, all-out demonic assault against this one man. Yet he still forges ahead and pushes forward. Why? And has this drawn him? What's it done for his faith? Has it drawn him closer to God to go through these trials and tribulations? That's tomorrow night on Stackleback Tonight, my exclusive interview with President Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States, and perhaps the 47th come November, who knows? But that's tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Stackleback Tonight show, my brand new nightly show every weeknight on TBN, the world's largest Christian television network. By the way, we've got the Watchmen YouTube channel here approaching nearly 1 million subscribers. Hard to believe. We just launched a second YouTube channel, folks. It's the Stackleback Tonight channel. We're going to have, since we've got this brand new nightly show on TBN, we have now a second YouTube channel devoted exclusively to Stackleback Tonight clips. So if you missed an episode of Stackleback Tonight, you'll see some great clips on our Stackleback Tonight YouTube channel. I believe it's at Stackleback Tonight. That's just in the search bar. If you're looking for it, we'd love for you to subscribe over there as well. And so we can build up that audience for Stackleback Tonight. So we've got the Watchmen here on this channel, and we've got the Stackleback Tonight channel here on YouTube now as well. So be sure to head over there and subscribe too. We just launched that a few days ago. It's going to be good. A lot of great content from the Stackleback Tonight show will be posted there every single day. So we've got a 1-2 punch now here on YouTube. And we've got the podcast, of course, as well, called the Stackscast. A lot going on. God is keeping us busy because, folks, the stakes are high. Don't miss that interview with President Trump tomorrow night. In the meantime, let's break down. Speaking of legal persecution and kangaroo courts, Donald Trump is no stranger to that, sadly, everything going on with him. What about the International Criminal Court in The Hague in the Netherlands? Well, today, folks, I mentioned at the top what is going on there with these charges. And I want to quote you directly. Karim Khan is the chief prosecutor for the International Criminal Court. And I want to quote you directly what he is saying. And it's pretty stunning. This is an international tribunal, a world body. And to be so removed from reality, number one, but secondly, sinister. And number three, it's just wicked is the word that comes to mind. It's evil. It's complete falsehoods going after the world's one and only Jewish state, which is a democracy which has gone to extraordinary lengths to avoid civilian casualties in Gaza, as we've documented time and time again here on the newscast, which was attacked on October 7th and invaded on October 7th, which was the victim of a massacre on October 7th. And then Israel responds, and that's when the world gets interested, when Israel responds. But this is what Karim Khan said today. And I quote, this is from the Times of Israel. I'm just reading this right off my phone. In an unprecedented and hugely controversial development, I'd say so, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, said Monday, today, that he had requested arrest warrants from the court's judges for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, along with top Hamas leaders. Oh, wow. Gee, thanks. You threw the Hamas leaders in there as well. Khan said, and folks, fasten your seatbelts. Khan said that the charges against Israel's premier, Netanyahu, and its defense chief are for the crimes of, quote, causing extermination, causing starvation as a method of war, including the denial of humanitarian relief supplies, deliberately targeting civilians in conflict. And yet, hundreds of humanitarian aid convoys are heading into Gaza every day. But I digress. This is diabolical, folks. This is sinister. He goes on to say, we submit that the crimes against humanity charged were committed as part of a widespread and systematic attack against the Palestinian civilian population pursuant to Israeli state policy. These crimes, in our assessment, continue to this day, Khan said of Netanyahu and Gallant. Oh, and he also mentioned that he's applying for arrest warrants against Yahya Sinwar, Hamas's ruler in Gaza, Mohammed Daif, the leader of the organization, a military leader in Gaza, and the overall leader, Ismail Haniyeh, who at last sighting was hiding out in Qatar. But that's an afterthought. The main target here, targets, I should say, plural, are Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's defense chief, Yoav Gallant. Folks, talk about unprecedented, yes, no doubt. But you heard what I just rattled off to you, what Kareem Khan said today, what the charges are all about. He used the word extermination, intentional extermination, genocide, extermination, he said, and I quote, and intentional starvation as state policy. So what the chief prosecutor for this world body, hugely influential, the International Criminal Court, which, by the way, Israel is not a party to. They're not a member. They don't have any link to the International Criminal Court. Other nations do. Israel does not. Thank God. So Israel is saying basically, hey, buzz off. But by the same token, as I said near the top of this newscast, it must be taken seriously. Because now the world, this adds ammunition, folks, to the world efforts against Israel. And now the Israel haters, the growing legions of anti-Semites and Israel haters will point to this. And they'll say, look, even The Hague, even the International Criminal Court says Israel is guilty of genocide, intentional extermination and starvation of Palestinian civilians pursuant to official state policy. They're doing this on purpose. They're trying to exterminate a people group. With a straight face, he accused the state of Israel of doing exactly that, this chief prosecutor at the ICC. This gives ammo and fodder to the Israel haters. It gives, in their view, it gives them legitimacy. Look, a world body agrees with us, and not just the ICC. There's also the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, all these acronyms here. The International Court of Justice a few months ago, I should say, with South Africa leading the charge, declared Israel guilty of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. So they're investing Israel for that. The main two global courts, International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court. International Court of Justice focused on nation states. International Criminal Court focused on individuals. That's why Netanyahu and Gallant individually were targeted here. But all agree, they're piling on Israel, folks. And listen, I think the concern is, okay, say Benjamin Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, they leave the country for a meeting with foreign leaders, global dignitaries, and they are in a country which is a party to the International Criminal Court. What happens? Is there some shenanigans where there's an attempted arrest of them in that country? Folks, you might say, no way, crazy, never happened. Folks, today in 2024, if I've learned one thing, it's expect the unexpected. And evil is on the march. And the main target right now, seemingly, of that evil is the nation of Israel and the Jewish people writ large. So, unprecedented, disgraceful, demonic, but not surprising, sign of the times. And the Bible is very clear that the world's ire and anger and fury will increasingly be turned against the Jewish people and against the world's one and only Jewish state. Folks, there's one thing that unites the radical, secular, progressive left, I call them the regressive left, radical Islam, and the neo-Nazi types on the far, far right. And that is hatred of the Jewish people. Strange bedfellows. Anti-Semitism, the world's oldest hatred, makes for very strange bedfellows. And you're seeing it intensify right now. And the disappointment I felt over the past year to see, or since October 7th in particular, to see people in the conservative movement here in the States who I previously respected. Really, the mask has fallen. They've showed their true face. as anti-Semites with a complete lack of moral clarity, who are telling lies about Israel and allowing lies to be spewed about Israel and the Jewish people. It's been sad to watch, but very eye-opening and very illuminating in a lot of ways. But that's the point we're at right now. And this is par for the course. And the prophet Zechariah, in the book of Zechariah, chapter 12, folks, gave you an indication of where this is all heading when he said, a day is coming when Jerusalem, the ancient and ancestral capital of Israel, will become like a burdensome stone. You think there's not prophetic implications here? He said Jerusalem will become like a burdensome stone. And though all nations on earth be gathered against it, they will all be cut to pieces. They all covet Jerusalem. They all covet the land of Israel. So I said at the top, Israel could use a few good friends right now, needless to say. And that's where my good friends at ARTSA come in. Now, we're going to get to Raisi in a minute. Implications fall out there, what comes next. But real quick, folks, artsabox.com. I've been telling you about ARTSA over the past few weeks. Dear friends of mine, going back 4 years now, we've been working with ARTSA. They're the sponsor for today's newscast. And ARTSA does what is very hard to do right now. They're bringing Israel to your doorstep. Why is that hard to do? Because right now, tourism to Israel is almost, I don't want to say impossible, but it's come to a screeching halt since October 7th. That's problematic for Israel in a lot of ways in terms of its economy. Tourism is a driving economic engine in Israel. Now that's dried up. And this comes on the heels of COVID just a few years ago, where it also dried up. It's a 1-2 punch now for Israel. COVID, now the war, and tens of thousands of Israelis from northern Israel, from southern Israel, have been evacuated from their homes. And they don't know when they're going home. I say all that to say, you want to stand with Israel, support Israel right now with the economic problems Israel's running into. A good way to do it is to support Israeli small businesses and Israeli artisans. These are the kind of folks on the ground in Israel, handcrafted. They put these great products together that's delivered to your doorstep in an ARTSA box. Again, it's artsabox.com. And you want to bless Israel, bless the Israeli economy, bless Israeli small businesses. And by the way, these aren't some trinkets in a shoebox. These are beautifully handcrafted objects, sights, sounds, smells, straight from Israel, handcrafted lovingly and painstakingly by Israeli artisans, Israeli small businesses. Artsabox.com. Great work that they do. I've sent Artsabox subscriptions to friends at Christmas time, Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays. Again, especially for folks who've never been to Israel, or they're dying to get back and they can't because of the travel, obviously, restrictions now and limitations. Artsabox brings a taste, and again, the smells, the sounds of Israel, the sights to your doorstep. It's awesome. Artsabox.com. Hey, discount code WATCHMAN, that's MAN, for a 10% discount from your Artsabox subscription. Again, folks, ARTSA is the sponsor for today's newscast. We are proud to partner with them. Okay, Ibrahim Raisi, the butcher of Tehran, is dead. Now, in yesterday's live stream, we came to you breaking on a Sunday evening, and at the time, he was missing with strong suspicions that he was dead. Just to recap for you, Ibrahim Raisi was known as the butcher of Tehran for one main reason. And again, this is, folks, so ground shaking because Amir Abdollahian, the foreign minister of Iran, was also in that helicopter. There were 3 copters traveling together. Only one crashed into the side of a mountain, apparently, and that was the helicopter carrying Ibrahim Raisi and Abdollahian, the foreign minister. Folks, that's 2 of the top 3 officials in the Iranian government gone. The supreme leader is numero uno, obviously, the final decision maker. Khamenei, the president, answers to the supreme leader, largely a ceremonial role in some respects, but in other respects, a very important role because the supreme leader is not traveling around meeting with foreign leaders and foreign dignitaries. The president of Iran is. Raisi was essentially the Iranian regime's public face to the world. And the foreign minister, a very nasty actor who was traveling to Lebanon, Syria, and interfacing and meeting with Hezbollah. He was a conduit to Iran's ring of fire, its terror proxies. The foreign minister, that's the equivalent of the Secretary of State here in the United States. So these were obviously 2 of the top 3 officials in the entire Iranian government now dead. That follows, obviously, Qasem Soleimani, the terror master killed 4 years ago. The father of Iran's nuclear program, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, also killed 4 years ago. So this regime over the past 4 years, 4.5 years, has really taken some lumps, folks. But Raisi, why the butcher of Tehran? Why did everyone call him the butcher? Well, in the late 1980s in particular, while he was a member of Iran's judiciary, he personally oversaw the execution of thousands of Iranian dissidents, people who were sick, Iranians. And remember, the Iranian people are the main victims of this demonic regime. It's not the Iranian people, it's the Iranian regime, the Iranian government. Key distinction there. But the Iranian people for over 30 years have been fed up. This regime came to power in 1979. It's been 45 years of misery for a beautiful country with a great ancient civilization. Modern day Iran was once ancient Persia, folks. It was a Bible land. Mordecai, Esther, Cyrus, Darius, all there in ancient Persia, which is now called Iran. The Iranian people are the main victims, and for years they've been rising up and saying, no, we don't want to live under this yoke of this radical Islamic jihadist regime. And as far back as 1988, Ibrahim Raisi was leading crackdowns and having people slaughtered. So he earned that name, the Butcher of Tehran. And in the aftermath, he presided over in 2022. Remember those Masa Amini riots, that young lady who was murdered by Iran's so-called religious police? Raisi put those protests down as well. At least 500 Iranians were killed there. Raisi was in office in the presidency a month ago when Iran launched that unprecedented assault against Israel, over 300 projectiles launched. Miraculously, and I don't say that lightly, miraculously, 99% of those projectiles were shot down before they were able to reach Israel. But he was all for it, folks. And he has past tense, vowed the destruction of Israel repeatedly. He was a genocidal, evil man. And that's a fact. And Abdullahian was as well. And now they're gone. So now what? And Iran, so far, there's not any talk of foul play. And you're going to hear conspiracy theories running wild. Don't doubt that over the next few days, for sure. And the Jewish people in Israel will be at the forefront of those conspiracies. People are saying, hey, after what happened on April 13th, this is Israel's revenge, and it's out there. Israel denying it, obviously. And even Iran so far has said, look, it was bad weather conditions, no foul play. It happened. That's the Iranian regime's official line, unless they change their tune. And I got to tell you, yesterday when this news broke, I was kind of holding my breath and saying, here we go. Iran's going to say Israel did it. They're going to point the finger. And they didn't. Usually their MO would be the Zionist enemy or the Americans or the British did this. But they've been pretty tight-lipped in that regard. And they've said, look, it was bad weather and a horrible accident is basically what they're saying. But what about, as theories abound, because look, the other two copters made it. This copter with two of the top three officials did not make it. Both are enemies, clearly, of Israel. And I'm a firm believer, and God will bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. History clearly bears that out for anyone daring to pay attention. But what about Iranian dissidents who we're talking about? Look, the Iranian people, if you're looking at other theories for what happened, and I'm not going to dig into that at the moment at all, because look, we can't be all about speculation. You got to know what you're saying. That's why I waited till yesterday evening to do a live stream, because we want to get all the facts here on the Watchmen. But people are throwing out, was it Iranian dissidents? So we shall see. I'm just saying that just so you know, there's going to be a lot of discussion over the next few days about who did it. And folks, maybe, just maybe, it really was bad weather and a helicopter crash, which has happened many times before in bad weather, in fog, in horrible weather conditions. But I'm sure we will hear this discussed backwards and forwards over the next few days. What comes now? Raisi is gone. Does this send Iran into chaos, into a tailspin? Last night, when the news broke, the Iranian people across Iran were setting off fireworks and celebrating this news. That's how much the Iranian people, again, the main victims of this regime, that's how much the Iranian people hate this wicked regime. Could we see now? Will the Iranian people see an opening here to rise up? It's possible. Could they see this as a sign that there's going to be disarray in the Iranian government? Could they see this as a prime time to move and stir things up in this time of uncertainty? Perhaps. No guarantee there, but perhaps. Because look, it's certainly a time of disarray in that you just lost two of your top three officials. Um, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, 85 years old. Ibrahim Raisi, key point here, folks, had been mentioned as a possible successor, that he was being groomed to succeed Khamenei. Remember, Raisi was a cleric, but he had been thought by many to be the possible successor to Ayatollah Khamenei. That's out the window now, clearly. Now, Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, he's 54 years old. He now becomes the front runner to succeed his daddy as supreme leader. And people have pointed to that as well in speculating what exactly happened here. But 54-year-old Mojtaba Khamenei is probably the likely successor now as supreme leader whenever his father passes on. And again, Khamenei, the senior, the elder, 85 years old, rumors persisting for years. He's battled cancer. So does this clear the way, pave the way for kind of a family dynasty now as supreme leader, with Mojtaba Khamenei, the 54-year-old, eventually becoming supreme leader? That's number one. Number two, who's the next president of Iran? And again, the supreme leader is the ultimate decision maker, but the president plays a weighty role. The president, again, essentially the regime's face to the world. It was Raisi, not Khamenei, who gave speeches at the UN General Assembly each September, for example. So the successor, there's an interim president, Mohammad Mokhber. Mohammad Mokhber is the interim president. He was a deputy to Raisi. He was the vice president, so they promoted him to the presidency on an interim basis. Now, apparently within the next 50 days, Iran will have an election, quote unquote. An election in Iran means the supreme leader handpicks who he wants to be president, just so you know. But within 50 days, we'll have a full-time Iranian president. And there hasn't been a whole lot of speculation about that yet, who that's going to be. Again, right now it's Mohammad Mokhber is the placeholder, interim. But surely, whoever the choice is for the Iranian regime will be very telling. When they chose Raisi in 2021, folks, that was really laying down the gauntlet to the world and saying, we're not trying to moderate. This is who we are. This is what we're going to be about. And we're not trying to give. In the past, you had Hassan Rouhani from 2012 on. He was the smiling, supposedly moderate face of the Iranian regime, although he had the same genocidal aims. But when Raisi was announced as president, the mask had completely fallen. There was no pretending. The Iranian regime was saying, this is who we are. Raisi is a true believer in the Iranian revolution, that jihadist apocalyptic ideology. He's our guy. He's the face of the regime. What are you going to do about it? It's basically what Iran was saying to the world, especially the Biden administration in Europe, where they see weakness. And you might say, oh, how do they see weakness? How weak are you when the European Union is offering condolences today to Iran for the deaths of Raisi and Abdullahian? Raisi and Abdullahian, two men who would like to destroy Europe. I don't say that lightly. And they're receiving condolences. And the Biden administration, while slamming Raisi, rightfully so, also offered condolences. Now, would the Iranian regime ever offer condolences if a U.S. or European leader was to die in a helicopter? Folks, I think we all know the answer. But again, the West has done nothing but appease and project weakness in the face of Iranian aggression, really, for 45 years, or for the better part. On the rare occasions that the West steps up, I think of Ronald Reagan sinking the Iranian fleet in 1987. I think of Donald Trump taking out Soleimani in 2000. Man, these are periods where Iran is on its heels and backing up. They're also very nervous in 2003, no matter what you think of Iraq. But in 2003, when Saddam went down, the Iranian regime was nervous for their own survival. But more often than not, it's been the opposite. They've been confident, they've been emboldened, and they've been on the march. So what happens now with Raisi out? We're going to talk about this a bunch more here on the newscast in the weeks to come, I am sure, folks. Breaking news continues to develop. Hey, quick reminder again, I mentioned President Trump, Soleimani. If you're just joining us tomorrow night, Tuesday, May 21st on TBN, the Trinity Broadcasting Network, on my new nightly show, Stackleback Tonight, airing every Monday through Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time and with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Check out my exclusive interview with the 45th and perhaps soon to be the 47th President of the United States. Donald Trump will be joining me on Stackleback Tonight. Tomorrow night, Tuesday, May 21st. Folks, tune in. Do not miss it. Until then, until tomorrow, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.